The Olympic break is officially here, which means we are basically 2/3 of the way through the season. At this point, we have a pretty good idea of what teams are, who is going to be in the playoff hunt, and who isn't. So I figured I would make a video going over how I'm feeling about each team at this point in the season. I've made a video like this every year for a few seasons now, but I realized that I haven't done one yet this season, so I figured now would be the perfect time. But before we get started, if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year long, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are getting super close to 84,000. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off with the Anaheim Ducks, who have been, in my opinion, one of the more fun teams to watch in the league this season, which is a massive change from the previous few years where Greg Cronin had these guys playing just an insufferable style of hockey. The huge leap they have taken offensively under Quenneville has been great to see. All the guys you want to see playing well and producing are, for the most part. Guys like Leo Carlson, Gauthier, McTavish, Seneca, and Lacombe have really established themselves as one of the best young cores in the league. The team defense and goaltending definitely needs to improve before they become a legit contender, but there's no doubt that they are on the right track. Next up, we have the Bruins, and they have been one of the more surprising teams in the league relative to the expectations I had for them coming into the season. I thought that offense was going to be very hard to come by for them outside of Pastrnak and Geeky, but it's actually been quite the opposite. Thanks to bounce-back seasons from guys like Zacha and Lindholm, and the emergence of guys like Kuznetsov and Minton, depth scoring has actually been a huge strength for Boston this season. In total, they already have 8 players with at least 10 goals, and that number could be as high as 11 soon, as Esimont has 8, and both Steves and Kostelic have 9. A deep offense like that to go along with a big bounce-back season from Swayman, and just like that, the Bruins are back in playoff contention after a quick one-year retool. The Buffalo Sabres, things looked pretty bleak for them early on in the season. It looked like they were well on their way to missing the playoffs for a 15th straight year, but man, what a turnaround they have had. They have the second best points percentage in the NHL since December 1st. They are comfortably in a playoff spot, and now we're at a point where it would take quite the collapse for them to miss the playoffs. Now, they are the Buffalo Sabres after all, so it's always going to feel like that's a real possibility, but I honestly just can't see it. I really think this team is legit, and say what you want about his tenure as Sabres GM, but it looks like the vision Kevin Adams had for this team is finally starting to come together. It is unfortunate for him that it didn't happen until after he was fired, but hey, better late than never. Moving on now to the Calgary Flames. After narrowly missing out on the playoffs last season, the hope from the front office was that they would be a competitive team again this season, but that just hasn't been the case. They can't score goals, and Dustin Wolf is having a bit of a sophomore slump. I really hope Conroy goes all in on selling this season and doesn't just stop at trading Anderson. This core is old and just isn't good enough. Get value for a lot of these veterans while you still can, and try and give yourself the best chance possible at landing that first overall pick. Next up, we have Carolina. They are having another very strong regular season, which is something that we have come to expect from this team year in and year out. They are a defensive juggernaut. Brandon Bussey has been one of the craziest stories in the league, an undrafted goalie who they claimed off of waivers just before the season started, and it feels like he just never loses games. He's 23-3-1. Nikolai Ehlers has been a great pickup as well. Same with Keandre Miller. This team already looks like a legit cup contender, and there's a good chance they are going to get even better, as they are in a prime position to be one of the most aggressive teams leading up to the deadline with the amount of cap space and draft capital that they have. Moving on now to the Blackhawks. For a while it looked like they may be able to stay in the wildcard hunt all season, but then Bedard got hurt and shit really hit the fan, and things really haven't gotten much better since he's came back. It feels like maybe Bedard came back too soon in an attempt to make a final push to make the Olympic team, because he hasn't looked nearly as good as he did early in the season. Obviously a lot to be excited about when it comes to this team's future, but I think they are still maybe a season or two away from being a legit playoff contender. Next up, we have Colorado, a team that got off to a historically good start to the season. It looked like they could potentially break the Bruins record for the most points ever by a team in the regular season, but now that feels like a long shot, as they've done quite a bit of losing lately. Not something I would be overly concerned about if I were an Avalanche fan, though. I still think they are the best team in the NHL from top to bottom. Really, their only flaw is that they can't score on the power play, which is baffling considering the amount of talent on that roster. Moving on now to the Blue Jackets. After a very underwhelming first couple of months that led to the firing of Dean Evason, they now find themselves just 4 points back of the Islanders for third place in the Metro. They are one of the hottest teams in the league. The old new head coach bump is a tale as old as time. They are 10-1 under Rick Bowness, with 9 of those wins coming in regulation. He has these guys ready to play. They've scored the first goal in 9 out of their 11 games so far with him behind the bench, and on day 1 when he was hired, he said you can't score your way into the playoffs. You need to be able to defend, and clearly this team has really bought into that because they have completely turned things around defensively. The Dallas Stars, one of 3 absolute wagons in that Central Division, they've had a great season so far despite the fact that a lot of key guys have missed a ton of time. The team defense is great. For any struggles that they may have to generate offense at 5-on-5, their power play makes up for it. Wyatt Johnston leads the league with 18 power play goals, and Jason Robertson is 9th with 11. I will say Ottinger's play has left a lot to be desired. I do think he needs to be better if they want to have a real shot at getting past teams like Minnesota and Colorado come playoff time. Moving on now to the Red Wings, and I'll be honest, it's hard not to be excited about where this team is at in the standings right now. They have one of the best points percentages in the league since December 1st, in large part thanks to the unbelievable run that John Gibson has been on, and Moritz Seider playing not just like a Norris candidate, but a legitimate MVP candidate. Now, they have kind of just been treading water for the last few weeks. It's been a bit of a struggle with Edvinsson out of the lineup, and even when fully healthy, this team definitely has a couple of clear needs that have to be addressed before the deadline to ensure that they don't have another late season collapse and finally snap this playoff drought. Next up, we have the Oilers, and they have been one of the biggest talking points in the league recently. After their latest loss to the Flames, Leon Draisaitl called out everyone in his post-game interview, from the coaches to the goalies, and I understand why he's frustrated. The Oilers have been a juggernaut offensively this season, but defense and goaltending has really been their Achilles heel, which is nothing new for this team, but this season it's been worse than usual. They brought in Jari, and he just hasn't been an upgrade. He's got an .870 save percentage in 11 games with the Oilers so far. Now, thankfully for Edmonton, they are in the worst division in the league, so despite their struggles, they still find themselves second place in the division. It doesn't feel like they are in jeopardy of missing the playoffs or anything like that, but if this is the way they're going to play once they get there, I can't imagine they're going to go very far. Moving on now to the Panthers, and it's starting to look like there is a real chance the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions are going to miss the playoffs. They are currently last place in the Atlantic. We knew this season was going to be tough for them without Barkov and with Tkachuk missing the first few months, but even since Tkachuk has came back, they haven't been able to string wins together, with just 4 wins in those 10 games. The thing is, it feels like they've actually played alright this season. The underlying numbers are solid, but Bobrovsky just can't make a save, and that's really been their biggest issue. He has the 3rd worst goal saved above expected in the entire NHL, ahead of only Merrilainen and Binnington. Even if this Panthers team was fully healthy, it would be tough to have a good season when your starter is playing like that, especially in a very tough Atlantic division. Now, Panthers fans did get some great news the other day as we learned that the 2026 first rounder they sent to Chicago as part of the Seth Jones trade is actually top 10 protected. Not sure why it took so long for that to come out, but boy is that ever a relief, because it's looking like there's a pretty good chance that pick lands in the top 10. The Kings are up next. Pretty underwhelming season for them so far. They have kind of been saved by the loser point. They actually have the same amount of wins as Calgary, which is pretty crazy, and the biggest reason why they've struggled is obviously the offense. This team can't score. It doesn't really matter how good your goaltending and team defense is. If you are this bad offensively, you're probably not going to go very far or be very good. Now, they did just go out and get Panarin, which is huge. If you watched the video I made breaking down that trade, then you would know I love the move for the Kings. He's the kind of player that is capable of unlocking a whole new level for a team offensively, and that is exactly what this Kings team needs. Next up, we have the Wild, and man, what a season it has been for them so far. If you were to rank every NHL fan base based on where their morale is at, Minnesota Wild fans would have to be at the top. They must be on cloud 9 right now. From getting Kaprizov locked up long-term right before the season started, to Boldy taking another leap and looking like a legit superstar, to Wallstedt breaking out out and him and Gustafsson forming one of the best tandems in the league, to being the team that was able to land Quinn Hughes in a trade, everything has fallen into place for the Wild this season, and they look like legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. Speaking of fan bases that must be on cloud 9 right now, next up we have Montreal. What a season it has been for them so far. They currently sit second place in the Atlantic, despite the fact that they've gotten really poor goaltending. I think that just speaks to how dynamic this offense is. Suzuki continues to improve his offensive output every season. Caulfield has emerged as one of the absolute best goal scorers and most clutch goal scorers in the league. Slavkovsky is playing the best hockey of his career. Lane Hutson is a Norris candidate. Demidov is a Calder candidate. And Dobson has been a great addition as well. They really do have one of the best young cores in the league. And if Montembeault can just find a way to regain his form from last season, I think this team could do some real damage come playoff time. Next up, we have Nashville, a team that has been in the news recently as Barry Trotz announced he is going to be stepping down from his role as GM once they're able to find a replacement. It'll be interesting to see how that affects the way Nashville approaches the deadline. They have quietly been able to hang around in the wild card race, but I honestly think it would be in the best interest of the organization to sell. This core is old, and even if they are able to sneak into the playoffs this season, does anybody think they have a real shot at getting out of the first round against a team like Colorado or Vegas? Probably not. So similar to what I said about the Flames, I think it's time to start moving some of these veterans while they still have value. Moving on now to the Devils, and to put it bluntly, it has been a season from hell for them. Markstrom's game has fallen off of a cliff, and his 2-year extension doesn't even kick in until next season. Jack Hughes can't stay healthy. Luke Hughes hasn't had the kind of breakout season people were hoping for. Bratz, Heischer, and Meyer are all producing way less than they did last season. It's getting harder and harder to envision a path to contention for this team, which is pretty crazy because a few years ago it looked like they had one of the brightest futures in the league. The New York Islanders are up next, and they're in a pretty interesting spot right now. Up until this point in the season, I would definitely say they have exceeded expectations. After trading guys like Nelson and Dobson, it looked like the Islanders were headed towards a full-on rebuild, but then Schaefer happened, and I think him being this good already has really changed things. On top of that, Barzal is healthy, which has been huge for this team. Sorokin is playing like a Vezina frontrunner, and Horvat has been fantastic as well, and all of that has led to the Islanders being surprisingly decent, to the point Darsh has actually gone out and added instead of selling, and I actually like that from him because it's not like he went out and traded premium assets for rentals. The focus should still be on building for the future, but at the same time, you want to reward your team for playing well, and I think the best way to do that is by making smaller moves like the ones we have already seen him make, bringing in guys like Soucy and Palat, and maybe holding off on selling pending UFAs like Peugeot and Lee. Next up, we have the Rangers, who are in a completely different situation than the Islanders. This season has been a disaster for them. They are in full-blown sell mode now, after Chris Drury released the Letter 2.0 announcing to the fans that they will be retooling. We've already seen them trade one of the key pieces of that core in Panarin, and it'll be interesting to see who joins him before the deadline in March. Moving on now to the Senators, they have recently started to string some wins together. Ullmark has won both of his starts since returning, which is a good sign. If he can regain his form from last season, then I don't see any reason why this team can't go on a run to finish out the season and make the playoffs, because goaltending and an awful penalty kill have really been the only things holding them back this season. And let's be honest, the awful goaltending is probably the biggest reason why the penalty kill has struggled as much as it has. They've been pretty good aside from that, allowing the fewest expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5 in the league, to go along with being in the top half of the league in pretty much every offensive category. Next up, we have the Flyers, and man, shit has hit the fan for them pretty quickly. They've got just 3 wins in their last 15 games. Matvei Michkov, who is supposed to be the next face of the franchise, has had a disastrous sophomore season. His ice time is way down. Tocchet has came out and said publicly that Michkov came to camp out of shape, leading to Briere coming out and kind of doing some damage control by saying Michkov isn't going anywhere and he will be in Philadelphia for a long time. It'll be really interesting to see the approach they take leading up to the deadline, because despite this terrible run they've been on, they are still within striking distance of a playoff spot, but I honestly think it would be in their best interest to sell, because they are one of those teams that I think are in jeopardy of being stuck in no man's land. Not good enough to make the playoffs, but not bad enough to land a top 3 pick. and that's never where you want to be for an extended period of time. Moving on now to the Penguins, and similar to what I said about the Bruins, they have been one of the most surprising teams in the league so far relative to the expectations I had for them coming into the season. I honestly didn't think we would ever see the core of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang get another crack at the playoffs together, but it's really starting to look like they're going to. I think Dubas deserves a lot of credit for putting the right pieces around those guys to help make this team competitive without sacrificing really any long-term cap flexibility or much of the draft capital he has accumulated over the last couple of years. Mantha, Brazeau, and Wotherspoon have been three of the best value signings from free agency this summer, and the Chinnikov trade is already looking really solid as well. Next up, we have San Jose, and they are another team that has really exceeded my expectations so far this season. Now, they have lost 4 straight and have fallen out of a playoff spot, but they are still a lot further along in this rebuild and a lot closer to being a legit playoff team than I thought they were heading into the season. And the biggest reason for that is obviously Macklin Celebrini, who is already one of the best players in the NHL and is having one of the most impressive seasons we have ever seen from a teenager, carrying this Sharks offense on his back. He is a legitimate Hart Trophy candidate, and if he is actually able to somehow will this team to the playoffs this season, despite the poor defense and mediocre goaltending, he would probably be my pick to win it. Next up, we have Seattle, and they have been playing pretty well lately. 5-1 in their last 6, currently sitting 3rd place in the Pacific. They have been getting great goaltending this season. No matter who is in net, Grubauer is playing some of the best hockey we have seen him play as a member of the Kraken. I do kind of wonder about the direction of this team sometimes, because last year they were big sellers, trading guys like Gord, Bjorkstrand, and Tanev. But now this season, it seems like the front office is dead set on trying to contend. Young guys whose development should be a priority for this team, like Shane Wright and Berkeley Catton, are playing very limited minutes, and Shane Wright is apparently somebody they are shopping to try and land a legit established top 6 forward. Elliot Friedman also reported that they offered Panarin a 4-year deal with an AAV higher than Draisaitl's if he would have accepted a trade there before ultimately choosing LA. I'll say the same thing about this team that I said about Philadelphia. I just kind of feel like they are stuck in no man's land without a clear direction, and that's really never where you want to be. Moving on now to the Blues, and this is a team that does seem to have a clear direction, and that direction is pointing towards a rebuild. It's pretty clear they aren't going anywhere with this core. They had the miracle run after the Four Nations last year and came seconds away from upsetting the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets in the first round, but at this point I think it would be silly to expect that kind of run from them again this season, as they have been a complete disaster for the most part. Really nothing has gone right for them. The special teams suck, they can't score, Binnington has probably been the worst starter in the league, so it makes sense why Doug Armstrong is probably thinking it's time to tear things down. They already made a move sending Bukestad to the Devils, and that is likely just the beginning of what should be a very busy couple of weeks leading up to the deadline. It sounds like almost everybody on this roster over the age of 25 is available for trade. Guys like Falk, Shen, Thomas, and Kyrou, as well as pending UFAs like Sundqvist and Joseph. Next up, we have Tampa Bay, and what a season it has been for them so far. They just don't lose games anymore, it feels like. They are 19-1-1 in their last 21 games. Nikita Kucherov has been playing out of his mind and now actually leads the entire NHL in points per game. Vasilevsky is in the Vezina conversation. Guys like Mosier and Radish have broken out in a big way. Everything is clicking for this team right now, and it's honestly pretty crazy considering the fact that Hedman has only played in 21 games, McDonough has only played in 22, and Brayden Point has played in just 37. Definitely have to give a ton of credit to John Cooper for the job that he has done with this group. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up winning the Jack Adams. Next up, we have the Leafs, and after that loss to Seattle last week, which was their 6th straight, it looked like this team was dead, but then they went on to rattle off 3 straight wins heading into the break and are now just 6 points out of a wildcard spot, so they aren't out of this playoff race by any means. But even with that being said, I definitely still think they need to sell. This roster is flawed, and with their lack of cap flexibility and future assets, it's going to be next to impossible to go out and improve this team to any kind of extent that's actually going to move the needle. Go see how many picks and prospects you can accumulate by trading guys like McMahon, Lawton, Ekman-Larsson, Waugh, and Carlo, and then reassess things in the summer with a ton of cap space and a lot more draft capital. Moving on now to Utah, and after a pretty mediocre November and December, they have really turned things around and have been playing some great hockey recently. They're 7-3 in their last 10 and in firm control of one of those wildcard spots in the West. They're definitely looking like a playoff team. The team defense is solid. Vejmelka has been great in net, and they are getting great production from guys like Gunther, Keller, and Schmaltz at the top of the lineup. Secondary scoring has been an issue at times, especially with Cooley out of the lineup, but they are definitely in a position as to where they could go out and make a couple of big swings to try and address that leading up to the deadline, as they have a lot of cap flexibility and a ton of draft capital still. The Canucks are up next, and what can you really say about this team right now other than they are in the midst of some pretty dark times? This team is awful. Demko is out long-term again. They already traded the best defenseman in franchise history in Quinn Hughes, and I would imagine we will see them move off some other pretty notable names before the deadline, as I don't think this is just going to be some quick retool. Out of every team that's going to be in contention for that first overall pick, I honestly hope the Canucks end up getting it. I really think that fan base deserves it for what they have been put through over the last year and a half. Moving on now to the Golden Knights, who are currently first place in the Pacific, so if you just look at where they're at in the standings, you would think they're having a pretty good season, but being first place in that division doesn't really carry the same weight as it has in previous years. For reference, Vegas would be 4th in the Central, 4th in the Metro, and 6th in the Atlantic. They're another team similar to the Kings that have kind of been saved by the loser point. They actually have the same amount of wins as teams like San Jose and Toronto. So when you put things into perspective like that, it actually feels like they have had a pretty underwhelming season so far, given the amount of talent on that roster. It's kind of a similar situation to Ottawa, though, where basically all of the underlying numbers look good, but they have just been crippled by some awful goaltending. So it'll be interesting to see if Vegas does anything to try and address that between now and the deadline. The Washington Capitals are up next, and it's been a pretty underwhelming season for them as well. They are 4 points out of a playoff spot currently after finishing as the #1 seed in the entire Eastern Conference last season. Now, they did just get Dubois back, and he scored in his return, so that should definitely be a big boost for them as they look to finish the season strong and get back to the playoffs. And now finally, finishing up the video with the Winnipeg Jets, and I've said this before in a video and I'll say it again here, relative to the expectations I had for them coming into the season, I think they have been the most disappointing team in the league. I do think most people, including myself, expected them to take a step back of some kind, but I don't think anybody could have envisioned them falling off this hard. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of approach they take leading up to the deadline. I kind of look at them as being in the same boat as Toronto, where I'm not saying you need to completely tear it down and enter a full-on rebuild, but it would probably be in their best interest to try and sell off guys like Nyquist, Shen, Stanley, and maybe even guys like Nemesnikov and Niederreiter, see how many draft picks and prospects you can accumulate, gain some more cap flexibility, get younger, and then reassess things in the summer. So that is going to wrap up today's video, giving you guys my general thoughts on every NHL team and the season that they have had now that we are at the Olympic break. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so be sure to sound off on your favorite team down below in the comments. Let me know how you're feeling, and if you made it all this way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does actually help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.